One of the coolest things about having a card game based on an existing IP is how it changes the card design process. You get to take characters with predefined characteristics and explore different ways to adapt those characteristics into card effects. This can be fairly difficult to do in the space of just one card. In Dual Force, some leaders work as standalone effects that don't need any additional support cards. For example, a card like Wonder Woman is a fantastic leader without needing any additional cards that support her directly, maybe with an effect like when this card's defense is increased, do this thing. Wonder Woman doesn't need a card like that to function in a cohesive 40 card strategy. However, other leaders will be codependent on their surrounding support cards. For example, Hal Jordan, and to a lesser extent to Hal Zatanna. As for right now, we know of 4 different ways Dual Force intends to expand its existing card pool: traditional expansions, monthly promo cards, comic adventures, and mini sets. Let's ignore the traditional expansions for just a moment because outside of card count limitations, it's kind of a non-issue, but comic adventures and promo cards are kind of the perfect way to release leaders that don't need any surrounding supporting cards. It's awkward to release a leader that's codependent on its support cards in a comic adventure because you get comic adventure cards week by week, so you would have to wait for the surrounding support cards to be released as well. Promo cards, that's less of an issue for because all of the cards are released simultaneously, but for people without the premium membership, they're going to need to craft those cards, so it gets a little bit awkward adding direct support cards for other promo cards within a single month of promo cards. That was a lot of promo cards, but hopefully you followed that. But I think it's best to leave leaders like Wonder Woman, like Lex Luthor, leaders that don't need any support cards to function. It's best to leave those to release in the comic adventures and promo cards. And so far we've seen that be the case. The only leader that we've seen is coming through promo cards is General Zod, and in a similar way, General Zod's card design doesn't need any surrounding support cards to function. But there are going to be leaders with more specialized designs, leaders that need surrounding support cards to really get true value out of them. Like, I don't know, let's say SHAZAM, for example. Leaders like SHAZAM should be added to the game through a mini set where you can add their surrounding support cards at the exact same time and have it all in this kind of compact way of consuming cards. As I kind of just mentioned, the team's already executed on this concept. We have 2 mini sets so far, the Green Arrow set and the SHAZAM set. The SHAZAM mini set introduced a new mechanic, Lightning Bolts. It's actually technically not a new mechanic. One of the Origin set cards does have the ability to generate lightning bolts, and it's imbued with lightning. So perhaps introduced isn't the best way to phrase it, but SHAZAM really elevates lightning bolts as a package. 6 of the 9 remaining cards in that mini set have direct synergy with SHAZAM's effect. Of those 6, 4 of them have synergy with lightning bolts without directly referencing lightning bolts in the text of the card, making them applicable in completely different strategies. In fact, of the 9 non-leader cards in the mini set, 6 of them have internal synergy with each other wrapped up in a neat bow named Mary Bromfield. She buffs up all of the cards with aura, and all of those 6 cards have aura. Now, while the optimal list for each of those concepts almost certainly won't include all of the cards in this mini set, just with 10 cards in a contained mini set, they've managed to inject 2 brand new strategies into the game. Before Mary Bromfield, there wasn't much reason to build a deck around aura, and quite frankly, there weren't enough cards to do it either. Mary Bromfield potentially opens up that possibility, and a bunch of new cards with aura written on them certainly helps that idea. And obviously you get the lightning bolt package. And that's without mentioning the 2 standalone cards as well. We have 6 Blessing, which potentially opens up an entirely new archetype all on its own. Honestly, the ideal deck for 6 Blessings probably isn't very great, but 6 Blessings being in the game certainly opens up a potential for different strategies that otherwise weren't there. And honestly, I was about to move on to the Green Arrow mini set, and I noticed that I hadn't mentioned Mr. Mind, which should probably be a crime because Mr. Mind's design is fantastic. It potentially goes in the Lightning Bolt package because it helps you draw and get further and further into your Lightning Bolts, but that's far from Mr. Mind's only home. You can plug him into like a mid-rangey aggro list as a top end to help you close out games, helps you find cards that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, and then also on average, at least through the limited testing we've had so far, it seems like Mr. Mind is going to be a 6/6 a lot of the time, at least when it passes back to your turn, because even among those 2 cards, if they don't draw an action, you still have 1 more draw effect to potentially get a buff from, because during the opponent's turn, they'll draw a card as well, and then if that card's an action, Mr. Mind will get the +3/+3. So while the mini set does manage to have all of this internal and external synergy, while it's injecting new playstyles into the game, it also manages to add cards to round out design spaces in other places of the game. I cannot overstate how much I love the design of this set overall. It just adds so much to the game with just a small list of 10 cards. The Green Arrow set is a bit different. Green Arrow himself generates Trick Arrows, which is a set of 15 unique tokens that only can be generated by him and one of his cards, Speedy. Of the 9 non-leader cards, 5 of them have direct synergy with Green Arrow and his trick arrows without referencing the word trick arrow once in the card's text. In fact, with the exception of the previously mentioned Speedy, none of the Green Arrow cards directly reference trick arrows. Speedy kind of has to reference trick arrows because he's generating a trick arrow, but even in that example, Speedy does not have to be run in a Green Arrow deck, and vice versa. You can definitely run Speedy outside of Green Arrow lists. You're not forced into playing Green Arrow to run Speedy. And similar to the previous mini set, all of these cards have their home in other lists. Malcolm Merlin can be included in heavy action lists as a strong removal combo. Onomatopoeia works in any deck that cares about firepower compatibility. Connor Hawk actually manages to encourage a bunch of different ideas, none of them necessarily hit in my opinion, but that's not really what the conversation is about. The design is really what we're focusing on here, and Connor Hawk's design manages to touch a lot of different places of the game simultaneously. He encourages hunter packages, maybe you want to do something with him and Renee Montoya or Peacemaker. Anything action related he benefits from, whether it be gadgets or trick arrows or just regular actions that you put in your deck. Similar things can be said for John Diggle, but even more so. John Diggle obviously has the direct synergy with the action generation effects like gadgets and obviously trick arrows, but he also synergizes in other factions as well because he's just checking to see whether you generate an action. He doesn't care whether it's entering your hand or not. So for example, you could run John Diggle in a tactics energy list that focuses on lightning bolts, and now John Diggle is getting +1/+1 whenever you generate one of those lightning bolts, or at least the first time that you generate one of those lightning bolts. And while the 3 cards in this mini set that I haven't mentioned yet don't have direct synergy with trick arrows, each of them fill their own role in the game. Shadow is a unique buff card for early tempo decks. Brick is a high defense recruit who is quote-unquote immune to early game removal cards and has the potential to synergize with self-damage effects like Earthquake and Shockwave, while Cupid is a silver option for adrenaline decks and even other types of mid-range decks that might want to take advantage of that type of tempo removal tool. Both of these sets started from what is a relatively simple idea that expanded from that character and what it was based on. Green Arrow's chosen defining characteristic was a variety of trick arrows that he uses in the lore of DC, which led to a pool of 15 generatable tokens that can only be generated from Green Arrow, which led to a bunch of cards that synergize with actions and action generation. Shazam's chosen defining characteristic was his lightning-based superpowers, which led to a dramatic expansion of the support cards for lightning bolts. Previously, there was only one lightning bolt card in the game. Mini sets in general seem like such a small thing for the game, but it really lets the team add new and exciting archetypes self-contained in a small package for the player. Let's say the team comes up with a really cool concept for, I don't know, Beast Boy, and let's say it's a transform effect that lets him use cards from other factions or something like that. Adding another card that supports that idea, for example, maybe a 1/1 bronze card that reads every time you play a faction or a card from another faction that isn't in your deck at the start of the game, give this +2/+2. Adding that card and that archetype and the surrounding support cards needed to really let that archetype be a thing. You either have to take away a lot of room in an existing expansion, or it's just perfect for a mini set because, like I said, you can't add those types of cards, these types of cards that work really well together. You can't add them through like a weekly release system, like for example the comic adventures, and like I said, it's a little bit awkward to do with the promo sets. Not to say it's impossible to do with the promo sets, it's just it's more awkward than it has to be. It's also worth mentioning that it's a fantastic way to get into deck building. If you see a brand new mini set come out and it's based on a character you really like I don't know, Red Hood or something like that, and you want to build a Red Hood deck, the 9 other cards that are designed to support Red Hood as a leader, you could just include all of those in a deck, and it won't always be 9 because obviously some of them are going to be in other factions and whatever, and some of them are going to be cards that plug into other packages in the game, like for example, like we talked about earlier with Onomatopoeia and Cupid, but for the most part you're going to get somewhere around 5 cards that directly synergize with that leader. That's already 25% of the deck that you need to build around Red Hood. From there, it's pretty easy to build a deck, or at least it's much easier to build a deck than it otherwise would be able to. So it's great for players who maybe aren't the best at deck building. It's great for kind of more casual players. It's great for consumers who are looking to save a little bit of money because these mini sets are actually quite cheap. And if you just want one of the cards in the mini set and you don't want to buy the whole mini set, you can always just craft the card. Also, I didn't even mention this, but because each of these mini sets adds a new leader, at least so far, we haven't seen a mini set that doesn't add a new leader. Even if we ignore all of the implications about, you know, the different archetypes that each of these mini sets add, you're still getting a new leader in the game, which opens up a whole new plethora of deck building possibilities for people who really care about deck building as a part of the game. And obviously I'm one of those people. Each new mini set is going to provide me a whole bunch of possibilities. Let's say a new mini set comes out and it has, I don't know, a Martian Manhunter leader, and now I need to figure out which is the best leader combination for Martian Manhunter. Not only what's the best 40 card combination, but what's the best, you know, let's say Martian Manhunter is a tactics leader, and now I need to decide, okay, is it best to go Martian Manhunter and pair it with Might? Is it best to go to energy? Is it best to go to maybe a mono strategy? Deck building is just so fun in this game, and most of that comes down to the leader system that they have in place. So if each of these mini sets is really going to add a new leader, then each of them is going to be a big splash on the game, even if it's not something that's crazy meta defining or shakes up the meta in a big way. At the very least, it's going to be a fun deck building puzzle for at least a few weeks, I hope. So yeah, I guess this video is just to say that I think mini sets are awesome, and I'm really excited about the future of them. I'm not sure how often they're going to do mini sets. For most of the content delivery systems in the game, they've actually been pretty transparent about how most of it works. That's not to say they're not being transparent about mini sets. I just don't think the question has really come up. We know that we're getting comic adventures every week, so that's one new card a week at the very least, and then we're getting 3 expansions a year, I believe was the most recent update, but I think that was all the way back in 2021. We know for sure we're getting expansions, we just don't know how many per year, and then we're getting a batch of promo cards every month, and then I don't know what the status of these mini sets are. I don't know if we're going to get these mini sets every month, if we're going to get them every 2 months, if we're going to get them every 3 months. I don't know what their plan is for how frequent these mini sets are going to be, but honestly, I think of all the different types of content that's coming to the game, mini sets are probably the thing I'm most looking forward to, even more so than like full-sized expansions. All right, I think that's everything from me. Keep being awesome. Let me know which of the 2 mini sets that you like the most so far. Keep being awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one.